I'm Alex Dykes with thetruthaboutcars.com, and today we are taking a look at the 2016 Mazda MX-5 Miata. Now, the MX-5 Miata is an interesting car in the United States because we don't have very many vehicles like this, as you do find in certain other world markets. That's because the MX-5 is an ultra-lightweight rear-wheel drive sports car, and ultra-light means very expensive to develop and still meet US crash regulations. It also tends to be fairly expensive to build a vehicle like this because it sells in low volume. And that's what makes the MX-5 even more interesting and more attractive, because this model only ranges from around $25,000 to about $32,000 fully loaded. Calling a two-door roadster a lightweight is no bad thing. This particular model with the manual transmission Club Sport trim, which has the single-lined top, comes in at around 2,310 pounds. The Scion FRS and Subaru BRZ, which are in this same sort of vein, hardtop of course, are 2,800 pounds. Even the Alfa Romeo 4C, which has that ultra-lightweight carbon fiber body, is actually heavier than this at 2,465 pounds. In case you're wondering what the luxury options end up at, a Porsche Boxster is 2,880 pounds, and a BMW Z4 is nearly 1,000 pounds heavier than this at 3,263 pounds for the lightest version. In terms of overall design, the front end has a different look than most of the Mazda vehicles out there. We get these angry headlamps up front, and they're all LED in every version. That helps save weight as well. The MX-5 is very much a modern roadster in the classic British sports car tradition. We have this classic roadster shape, long hood up front, short passenger compartment right here, and then an actual trunk in the back. This is different, of course, than that Alfa Romeo 4C, which is a mid-engined vehicle. So the engine is right back here behind the driver, but in front of the trunk. In terms of overall size, the MX-5 has barely grown over the decades. This is actually about the same size as the 1990 Miata. This is 154 inches long, meaning this is actually shorter than the Alfa Romeo 4C, even though we have more creature comforts and more room on the inside. This is also a decent amount shorter than the FRS, the Z4, or even a Porsche Boxster. Although the front end is unique in the Mazda family, the rear end mirrors more of the other Mazda models out there. Since we're in the Club Sport trim, we have some black trim on the top for the spoiler and the little strip down there at the bottom of the bumper, but the tail lamps definitely mirror what we see in the Mazda 3 and the Mazda 6. We have twin exhaust tips over here on the passenger side only. Even though the MX-5 is not a terribly large vehicle, we still have a decently sized trunk for a vehicle this size. You can actually fit a 24-inch roller bag in there, some additional luggage around there. That's definitely more than you can in something like the Alfa. Under the hood of the MX-5, we find basically the same 2-liter 4-cylinder engine we see in a variety of other Mazda models, except it's rotated 90 degrees because this is a rear-wheel drive vehicle. This engine is half a liter larger than you find in most of the MX-5s in the world, because everybody else out there gets a 1.5-liter 4-cylinder engine. This is mated to either a 6-speed manual or a 6-speed automatic transmission, and either way you get excellent fuel economy with 34 miles per gallon on the highway in this particular model, 36 in the automatic transmission version, and we've been averaging over 31 miles per gallon during this week. In case you're wondering, adding the automatic transmission adds just over 40 pounds to this model, so it's a very small weight penalty if you'd rather not row your own. When you first hop inside the MX-5, you'll notice immediately that this is definitely a Mazda. It's styled very similarly to the other Mazda models out there, and it feels very much like a normal car. Now, the reason I say that is because if you hop in the Alfa Romeo 4C, you'll find considerably less comfortable seats. They're a lot thinner, they're not padded as well, they don't recline terribly far either, you don't find navigation system or a touchscreen LCD in the dashboard, you don't find dual USB inputs or small storage cubbies on the inside either. In fact, in the Alfa, we don't even find carpet. It's just bare carbon fiber right there visible to the driver. And again, this is actually lighter than that 4C. The other thing you won't find is a convenient and easy to put up and down top, right here like we have in the Miata. In the 4C, you actually have to get out and unscrew the top and unbuckle it and then roll it up, and then you really don't have anywhere to put it. In the Miata, not only do you have somewhere to put it, but it's only a one-handed operation. You can just lift it up, lock it right into place, lower it back down while you're in motion as well. All the controls are also very normal in the Mazda Miata. We have a traditional 6-speed manual transmission over here, tachometer, speedometer, etc., right over here in a physical gauge cluster. Over there in the 4C, we have a funky and somewhat small LCD instrument cluster. We also have a dual clutch transmission with controls that would really confuse the average American driver. Well, we still don't have a power seat over here on the driver's side. This is actually more comfortable than we find in the FRS, the BRZ, or yet again that Alfa Romeo. We actually have a little bit more adjustability than we find in the Alfa. We can again move the seat forward and backward, and we actually get more recline than we do in that 4C as well. On the downside, for Americans, it's obvious that real cup holders weren't really a strong priority in this vehicle. We do have one. It does fit medium-sized cups, but it does feel a little bit flimsy right there. You'll also notice on the passenger side, we have a bulge right there on the floorboard. We don't have one as large on the driver, but it's still quite similar. The other cup holder location is right back here between the front seats. You can actually plug this other cup holder in right like that, and then have two cup holders between the seats or remove them. And you'll see the problem immediately with this is that there is a small storage cubby right here as well, but it kind of interferes with that cup holder. There's also a single slot optical disc player below that storage compartment. The MX-5 has long been about lightweight driving precision. This is definitely the classic British sports car in terms of ideal. We have light curb weight, we have relatively narrow tires, we have a lively, dynamic, and excellent steering feel. The light curb weight has really defined everything about the MX-5 out on the road. Even though we don't have that much power under the hood, we still ran from 0 to 60 in 6.3 seconds, which is very good in this segment. That is definitely faster than the FRS or BRZ, which came in at around 6.9 in my testing, even though you get more power out of those engines. On the downside, the light curb weight means that we only get a single layer of canvas on this roof, and that means this cabin is quite noisy. It's 76 decibels. This is only barely quieter than the Alfa Romeo 4C, definitely louder than your average compact sedan. Now on the good side, we get excellent braking numbers, even though these tires are quite narrow. 111 feet from 60 to 0 in this Club Sport model, which has the 205 with summer tires. That's actually quite good. That's really very, very close to something like a Corvette Stingray. Fade resistance is also excellent with the upgraded Brembo brakes that we have on this particular model. Handling is absolutely excellent because of the light curb weight and because the precision and the balance of this chassis is just absolutely perfect. On the downside, the stability control program in the MX-5 is fairly aggressive, but it is defeatable, and when it is defeated, the MX-5 is very lively in the rear. The tires in this car are not terribly wide, and the transmission has an excellent set of gear ratios. Perhaps the biggest beneficiary from the light curb weight in this vehicle is the fuel economy. We've been averaging over 31 miles per gallon, over about 600 miles of very mixed driving, and that is an absolutely excellent fuel economy number for any sports car. I rank both transmissions very highly. The clutch pedal in this car has a nice feel to it. It's not overly heavy, it's not overly light either, and the engagement is very linear. One thing that I like about this clutch pedal is that the engagement is also quite gradual, so it's not one of those almost digital clutch pedals where it's either on or off and the travel is very short. This has a nice long travel and the engagement is again very linear. Pricing and comparisons are where the MX-5 truly shines, because this starts at $24,915, and you get things like the LED headlamps on that model that you don't find in pretty much any of the competition. The Club Sport model that we've been looking at here is $28,600 and gives you things like the sport suspension and a limited slip differential. You can also add the tire and wheel package that's on our model and the optional Brembo brakes on that Club model. If you'd rather have the luxury version, that starts at $30,065, and you can add the automatic to any of them for $1,205. Keeping in mind that the MX-5 is a convertible, it tops out at just under $33,000, which is a very good value. Scion's FRS starts at $25,305. Really the only option over there is the automatic transmission. You don't have any of the same kind of luxury features that we find in this model. Of course, you do get that very tiny back seat in the FRS, making it a little bit more practical in some ways than this, but overall, it's not that much more comfortable. Subaru's BRZ is very closely related to the FRS. Both of them are slower than the MX-5. Both of them don't handle quite as well either. But the BRZ comes close to the pricing range of this vehicle, starting at $25,395, going up to about $29,000. I think the most interesting competitor to the Mazda Miata is the Alfa Romeo 4C. Obviously, it is significantly faster than this. It goes 0 to 60 in 4.1 seconds. This is about 6.3 seconds over here. They brake very similarly to one another. The handling is a little bit better over there in the 4C, to be perfectly honest. It also has a rear weight bias to it, so it feels a little bit more like a Porsche, but you're going to pay an awful lot more for it, more like twice as much, because it starts at $53,009, rapidly ends up at $70,000. The closest other thing out of the market would be a BMW Z4 at around $49,000 to $70,000. Now the base Z4 with the 2-liter turbocharged engine is a little bit faster than this, but the difference isn't too big because, again, it weighs almost 1,000 pounds more than the MX-5. Obviously, we don't have a luxury badge on the front or on the back of the MX-5 like you do find on the Alfa Romeo or the BMW. I also think the Alfa Romeo is a little bit more attractive, but this is a damn sight more comfortable than that Alfa Romeo. Even though the Miata is lighter than the 4C, we get a roof that is an awful lot easier to put on and take off, and we have an interior with more luxury and more creature comforts than you find in the 4C at any price. The MX-5 feels kind of like a pared down BMW Z4. It's very direct, it's very one with the driver, and the whole thing feels lighter and more communicative with the driver than the Z4. The Z4 tends to feel a little bit too grown up for my tastes these days. It definitely has a more polished ride than we get over here, but it feels big, it feels heavy out on the road, and that's not going on in the MX-5. When everything is said and done, the only real reason to buy the FRS or the BRZ over this would be the back seat, which is again very small, and the only reason to buy the Alfa Romeo 4C over this would be the 0 to 60 time and of course that Italian badge on the front. So my bottom line in this particular segment is if you're looking for the absolute best two-seat roadster value, the MX-5 is definitely your choice. And if you're looking for one of the most fun two-seat roadsters, again, the MX-5 is a top choice. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video. Again, I'm Alex Dykes. Be sure and check out thetruthaboutcars.com, and I'll see you next week.